Sarah's husband's secret mistress mocked her in French at their anniversary restaurant, thinking she couldn't understand. She called her a pathetic abandoned dog and laughed about her fertility struggles. 3 hours later, she casually mentioned to federal agents that immigration would be very interested in their conversation. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how Sarah discovered that her husband's pregnant French mistress was nothing more than a calculating predator with a charming accent. It started on a crisp October evening in Manhattan. Michael Mitchell, Sarah's husband of 15 years, had finally suggested celebrating their anniversary at Le Bernardin, one of the city's most exclusive French restaurants. After months of growing distance between them, his sudden romantic gesture felt like a lifeline to their struggling marriage. Sarah Mitchell, a 42-year-old marketing executive, was clinging to hope that her relationship wasn't as broken as it seemed. "You look beautiful tonight," Michael said as they were seated, though his eyes seemed to scan the restaurant rather than focus on her. "I thought we should do something special. 15 years deserves recognition." Sarah warmed to the sentiment immediately. After months of him working late, guarding his phone obsessively, and treating their conversations like business meetings, this felt like the Michael she'd married. The one who used to surprise her with thoughtful gestures and actually listened when she talked about her day. "This place is incredible," Sarah said, admiring the elegant atmosphere. "I can't believe we've never been here before." "Celeste recommended it," he said casually, then caught himself. "I mean, a colleague mentioned it. Someone at the office who knows about these things." The name hit Sarah like a small electric shock, though she couldn't pinpoint why. Michael had mentioned several new colleagues recently, all connected to the French merger his firm had been working on. But something about the way he said this particular name felt different. Their server appeared with champagne Michael had apparently pre-ordered, another gesture that would have thrilled Sarah 6 months ago. Tonight, it felt performative, like he was checking boxes on a list rather than celebrating their relationship. "To us," he said, raising his glass with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "To whatever comes next." The toast felt ominous rather than romantic, but Sarah pushed down her unease and clinked glasses with him. During the first course, Michael seemed distracted, frequently checking his phone despite claiming this was their special night. Every buzz or notification pulled his attention away from their conversation, until Sarah finally asked if there was a work emergency. "Nothing urgent," he said, placing the phone face down. "Just some follow-up on the Du Bois account. You know how international clients can be with time zones. Here's the thing about assumptions. They can make you sloppy." Michael assumed his wife had never learned French beyond high school basics. What he didn't know was that Sarah had spent 2 years in Paris during college, studying international business and becoming fluent in French. Her skills might be rusty, but they were far from dead, and what she was about to overhear would change everything she thought she knew about her marriage. "I need to use the restroom," Sarah announced after the appetizer, partly because she needed to go, but mostly to give him a chance to handle whatever was making him so antsy. As she walked toward the back of the restaurant, she noticed Michael immediately reach for his phone. The gesture was so automatic, so practiced, that it confirmed what she'd suspected for weeks. But as she rounded the corner toward the restroom area, Sarah saw something that made her blood freeze. Michael was at a corner table, leaning intimately toward an elegant brunette who was definitely not a business colleague. Their body language screamed intimacy. The way she touched his hand, how he leaned in to hear her speak, the look in his eyes that Sarah hadn't seen directed at her in months. Instead of confronting them immediately, some instinct made Sarah duck into the small alcove near the restroom where she could observe without being seen. The woman was beautiful in that effortless European way, with dark hair pulled into a sophisticated chignon and clothing that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly salary. She looked like she belonged in this expensive restaurant, like she was accustomed to being the most elegant woman in any room. As Sarah watched, the woman pulled out her phone and began speaking in rapid French. Her voice carried just enough for Sarah to catch phrases, and she spoke with the casual assumption that comes from believing you're speaking a private language. What she didn't know was that Sarah understood every devastating word. "Oui, maman," she was saying into her phone. "She's here, sitting alone like a pathetic abandoned dog. You should see her, Michelle, so desperate and clueless." Sarah's heart started pounding as she realized the woman was talking about her. Michelle was Michael, and this stranger was describing her to someone while she sat unaware at their anniversary table. She's wearing that sad little black dress, trying to look sophisticated, but she just looks like she's playing dress-up in clothes too young for her. Sarah looked down at her dress, the one she'd chosen so carefully for tonight. The one Michael had complimented just an hour ago. Hearing it dismissed as pathetic by this stranger felt like being slapped. But the woman wasn't finished. She has no idea what's coming. Michel promised he'll tell her tonight, after dinner. Finally, he'll be free of that dead marriage, and we can start our real life together. The words hit Sarah like physical blows. Her husband had brought his mistress to their anniversary dinner to watch him end their marriage. This wasn't a romantic gesture or an attempt to reconnect. This was a performance, a final humiliation before he abandoned her. Oh, and get this. The woman continued with musical, cold laughter. She's been taking those hormone treatments, trying to get pregnant at her age. Michelle told me about the miscarriages, how desperate she's become. It's actually sad how she doesn't realize he's already moved on and started a real family with someone younger. I'm already 3 months along. By the time their divorce is final, we'll have our baby, and he'll be completely free of her biological clock drama. Sarah pressed her hand against her mouth to keep from making a sound. The woman was pregnant. Her husband's mistress was pregnant with his child, while Sarah had been struggling with fertility treatments and grieving their lost pregnancies. The cruelty was breathtaking, not just that he'd moved on, but that he'd shared the most painful details of their private struggle with this woman who was now using them to mock her. Don't worry, the mistress continued in French. I've already started working on isolating her from his professional life. Americans are so naive about European business relationships. She thinks those late nights are about client dinners, but really we've been building a life together. Her husband will be mine completely, and she'll be left with nothing but her sad career and empty apartment. The revelation that this wasn't just an affair, but a systematic replacement hit Sarah like ice water. This woman had been strategically working to steal her husband, to isolate her, to position herself as his new partner in both personal and professional spheres. She hadn't just seduced him, she'd been methodically destroying their marriage from within. Michelle is perfect for this, she said, her voice filled with satisfied confidence. Successful, generous, and completely infatuated. American men are so easy to manipulate when you know which buttons to push. A little European sophistication, some vulnerability about needing protection, and they'll abandon their wives without a second thought. The woman's laugh was getting louder, more confident. The best part is she still thinks this dinner is about saving their marriage. She's probably sitting there hoping he'll suggest couples therapy or a romantic vacation. The pathetic thing doesn't realize that while she's been playing housewife, I've been planning her replacement. Sarah realized she'd been holding her breath, and she forced herself to breathe slowly and quietly while this woman dissected her marriage like a specimen in a laboratory. Every fear she'd had about Michael's recent behavior was being confirmed in the most humiliating way possible. The timing is perfect, the mistress continued. Once he tells her tonight, we can accelerate everything. I've already found us an apartment in Soho, and Michelle's been moving money into accounts she doesn't know about. Her little marketing job won't support the lifestyle she's used to, but that's not our problem anymore. The casual way she discussed dismantling Sarah's financial security made it clear this wasn't just adultery. This was financial fraud, planned and executed with criminal precision. Sarah felt something shift inside her, a cold fury replacing the shock and pain. This woman had underestimated exactly who she was dealing with. Oh, and I've been having such fun with my little phone calls to her, the woman said, and Sarah felt her stomach drop. You know those market research surveys? Customer satisfaction calls. I've been calling her for months, pretending to be different companies, just to gather information about her insecurities and daily routines. It's amazing what people will tell you when they think it's anonymous. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The strange calls Sarah had been getting, asking about household products, relationship satisfaction, personal preferences, they'd all been her, systematically gathering information to help Michael destroy their marriage more efficiently. She'd been inside their relationship for months, studying Sarah like a predator studies prey. By Christmas, it will all be over, she concluded with satisfaction. Divorce filed, baby born, new life started. Michel will thank me for forcing him to finally make the choice he was too weak to make on his own. Christmas. That was 8 weeks away. She'd planned Sarah's entire life's destruction with a timeline, complete with milestones and deadlines. As Sarah watched the woman end her call and rejoin Michael at their table, transforming instantly from cold strategist into charming, vulnerable woman, she made a decision that would change everything. Instead of confronting them immediately, instead of collapsing into the devastation they expected, Sarah Mitchell was going to show them what happened when they picked the wrong target. Walking back to her table felt surreal, like moving through a nightmare where everything looked normal but nothing was real. Michael smiled as she approached, the same smile he'd been giving her for 15 years, but now Sarah knew it was a performance. "Everything okay?" he asked, and she wondered if he was asking about her bathroom trip or if he somehow sensed that his entire plan had just been exposed. "Fine," Sarah managed, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Just needed a moment to freshen up." The lie came easier than she expected, but then she'd apparently been living surrounded by lies for months without realizing it. What was one more? As Michael signaled for their server, Sarah caught sight of his mistress across the room, watching them with the satisfaction of a cat who'd caught a mouse. She knew what was coming. She knew this was their last meal together as a married couple, and she was savoring every moment of Sarah's ignorance. The cruelty was breathtaking, but it also gave Sarah something she hadn't had in months: clarity. For the first time in their marriage, Sarah knew exactly where she stood. No more wondering if she was imagining the distance. No more questioning whether their problems were her fault. No more hoping that couples therapy or romantic gestures would fix what was broken. Her marriage was over, deliberately and methodically destroyed by two people who'd been laughing at her attempts to save it. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed Sarah was the naive, desperate woman the French mistress had described to her mother. They'd underestimated what a 42-year-old marketing executive with fluency in French and access to investigative resources could do when she discovered she was being systematically betrayed. Over the next 2 courses, Sarah played the role of the loving, hopeful wife while her mind raced through possibilities. Michael chatted about work, mutual friends, holiday plans that he had no intention of keeping. All the while, Sarah was calculating timelines, assessing resources, and planning the most comprehensive investigation of her life. "I've been thinking," Sarah said as they shared dessert, "we should probably update our wills and insurance policies. 15 years is a good time to review our financial planning." Michael's fork paused halfway to his mouth, and Sarah caught the flicker of something that might have been panic in his eyes. "I mean, if something happened to one of us, we'd want the other to be protected, right?" "Of course," he said carefully, "though there's no rush. Our current arrangements are probably fine for now." His reluctance confirmed what Sarah had suspected. He'd already been working to ensure that if something happened to him, she wouldn't be the beneficiary. As they prepared to leave, Sarah excused herself once more, ostensibly to use the restroom again, but actually to get a clear photo of his mistress and record more of her conversation. The woman was still at her corner table, now alone and speaking animatedly on her phone in French again. "The pathetic wife is still here," she was saying. "Michel is taking forever to work up the courage, but it doesn't matter. By tomorrow night, she'll know everything, and by next week, she'll be signing divorce papers." Her confidence was absolute, her planning meticulous, her cruelty breathtaking. But as Sarah listened to her mock her marriage and plan her destruction, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months: power. For the first time since this nightmare began, she wasn't the victim. She was the one with secret knowledge, hidden advantages, and a plan that they couldn't see coming. That night, Sarah lay awake planning while Michael slept peacefully beside her, probably dreaming about his new life with his pregnant French mistress. He had no idea that the woman he was planning to devastate was already 3 steps ahead of him, armed with information he didn't know she possessed, and planning a counterattack that would leave both him and his girlfriend destroyed. By dawn, Sarah had a plan. It wasn't a nice plan, and it wasn't a simple plan, but it was thorough. If Michael wanted to play games with her marriage, her finances, and her future, she was going to show him what happened when he picked the wrong opponent. The first call Sarah made was to a private investigator named Patricia Wells, someone a friend had recommended during her own divorce proceedings. She needed to understand exactly who this French woman was, how long this affair had been going on, and what other lies Michael had been telling. The second call was to her attorney, not to file for divorce yet, but to understand her rights and protect her assets before Michael could move any more money. The third call was the most important one. Sarah contacted her old friend Marie Dubois from college, who now worked in immigration services. If Michael's mistress was here on a work visa tied to his firm's business relationships, there might be legal vulnerabilities Sarah could exploit. "Sarah, it's been forever," Marie said when she explained why she was calling. "I'm sorry to hear about what you're going through, but you're smart to gather information before making any moves." They talked for an hour about visa requirements, documentation, and what constitutes fraud in immigration cases. By the time they finished, Sarah had a roadmap for investigating Michael's mistress that would either clear her of wrongdoing or provide evidence that could have serious consequences. Patricia Wells arrived at Sarah's office that afternoon with a laptop and a recorder, ready to plan the most comprehensive marital investigation either of them had ever undertaken. She was nothing like what Sarah had expected. No trench coat or fedora, just a professional woman in her 50s who could have been any executive in Sarah's building. "The best investigations happen when nobody realizes they're being investigated," Patricia explained. "Especially in cases like this, where the subjects are already convinced they're smarter than everyone around them." She listened to the recordings Sarah had made at the restaurant, studied the photos she'd taken, and reviewed the timeline of Michael's behavioral changes. "This isn't just an affair," Patricia said finally. "This is a systematic fraud designed to maximize their gain and your loss. The pregnancy timing, the financial planning, the immigration angles, these people are professionals." "What do you mean, professionals?" Sarah asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. "I mean, this woman has done this before. The methods are too sophisticated, too well-planned for this to be her first time manipulating an American husband into abandoning his wife. We need to find out if there are other victims." The investigation took 3 weeks, and the results were more devastating than Sarah had imagined. Celeste Laurent, Michael's mistress, wasn't just a colleague who'd seduced him. She was part of a network that specialized in targeting successful American men for marriage fraud and financial exploitation. The pregnancy was real, but it wasn't Michael's first child with her. She'd already had one abortion 6 months ago when the relationship was less secure. Most damning of all, Patricia discovered that Celeste had been married to another American businessman just 2 years earlier, a relationship that had ended in divorce with a significant financial settlement. The marriage had lasted exactly long enough for her to obtain permanent residency, and the divorce had been carefully timed to maximize her alimony while minimizing her obligations. "She's not just planning to leave him," Patricia explained, showing Sarah bank records and immigration documents. "She's planning to take him for everything he's worth, then disappear back to France with American citizenship and enough money to live comfortably for the rest of her life." But Patricia had also uncovered Michael's role in the fraud, and that revelation was almost more devastating than learning about Celeste's criminal history. Sarah's husband hadn't been seduced by a beautiful French woman who genuinely loved him. He'd been recruited by a professional con artist, and instead of being horrified when he realized what was happening, he'd become a willing participant in defrauding his own wife. The evidence showed that Michael had been moving money into hidden accounts for months, not just to prepare for divorce, but to hide assets from the settlement process. He'd been systematically undervaluing their shared investments, transferring ownership of property into his name alone, and even taking out loans against their house without Sarah's knowledge. "The question now," Patricia said, "is what do you want to do with this information? We can turn everything over to the authorities and let them handle the criminal charges. We can use it in divorce proceedings to ensure you get everything you're entitled to. Or we can get creative." The plan Patricia outlined was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of confronting Michael immediately, they would let him proceed with his planned timeline while they prepared a counterattack that would expose both of them at the moment of their greatest vulnerability. They'd wait until after the pregnancy announcement, after he'd filed for divorce, after they'd committed fully to their fraud. Then they'd reveal everything at once. "Timing is everything," Patricia explained. "Right now, they think they're winning. They're confident, maybe even arrogant. That makes them sloppy. But once they've committed completely to their plan, once they can't back out without major consequences, that's when we spring the trap." The pregnancy announcement came the week before Thanksgiving, exactly as Patricia had predicted. Michael sat Sarah down in their living room with an expression of grave concern and artificial regret. Sarah, there's something I need to tell you. Something that's going to change everything between us. His performance was almost convincing. The reluctant husband forced to confess a terrible mistake. The remorseful partner who'd never meant for things to go this far. There's someone else, he said, his voice breaking slightly. A woman I work with. It started as just friendship, professional collaboration, but it became something more. She's pregnant, he continued, watching Sarah's face for the expected devastation. With my child. Sarah, I know this is the worst possible way to find out, but I couldn't keep lying to you. You deserve better than that. The irony of him claiming she deserved honesty while delivering the most dishonest speech of their entire marriage was breathtaking. Sarah let the silence stretch for a long moment, watching him fidget uncomfortably as he waited for her reaction. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm and measured. How far along is she? 3 months, he said quietly. I know the timing is terrible, but the timing isn't terrible, Sarah interrupted. The timing is perfect. It means she got pregnant right around the time you started working late every night. It means this wasn't just a moment of weakness. This was a relationship you built while you were lying to me about working late. Michael's face went white as he realized she'd done the math and understood the implications. That weekend, Sarah met with Patricia Wells to finalize their counterattack. The federal investigation into Celeste's immigration fraud was already underway, triggered by the evidence they provided about her previous marriage and current visa violations. Michael's financial fraud was documented and ready to be presented to both divorce court and criminal prosecutors. Most importantly, they'd identified the perfect moment to reveal everything. The New Year's Eve party Michael and Celeste were planning to announce their engagement. They're going to invite everyone, Patricia explained. His colleagues, both sets of friends, family members. They want maximum impact for their big announcement. It's going to be their moment of complete victory. And it's going to be their moment of complete destruction, Sarah added. Because that's when everyone will learn exactly who they really are. The plan required perfect timing and nerves of steel, but the payoff would be worth it. Instead of a romantic engagement announcement, Michael and Celeste would find themselves arrested for fraud in front of everyone they'd hoped to impress. December passed in a surreal haze of holiday preparations and secret investigations. Michael moved into a downtown apartment, supposedly to give them space, but actually to set up house with his pregnant mistress. He was careful to be generous with temporary support payments, probably to avoid any accusations of abandonment. He had no idea that every payment was being documented as evidence of his ability to hide assets. New Year's Eve arrived with unusual warmth for December in New York. Sarah spent the afternoon preparing for the evening with the care of someone getting ready for the most important performance of her life. She chose an elegant navy dress that conveyed success and confidence, styled her hair professionally, and put on the jewelry Michael had given her over the years. The party was at a private room in the same restaurant where they'd celebrated their anniversary, a detail that struck Sarah as either perfectly ironic or perfectly cruel. Celeste had insisted on Lou Bernardine for their engagement announcement, probably because she associated it with the night she'd successfully manipulated Michael into leaving his wife. Sarah arrived exactly on time, greeting friends and colleagues with warm smiles and genuine enthusiasm. Many of them had been expecting to offer condolences about her divorce, but instead they found her radiant, confident, and apparently thriving. The confusion on their faces was almost as satisfying as what was coming later. Michael and Celeste made their entrance an hour into the party, and Sarah had to admit they looked stunning together. He was wearing his best suit and the kind of confident smile that came from believing he'd successfully orchestrated a complex life change. She was radiant in the way only pregnant women can be, wearing a dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. As Sarah watched them work the room, accepting congratulations and enjoying the attention, she felt a moment of something that might have been pity. They had no idea that federal agents were already positioned outside the restaurant. They had no idea that their bank accounts had been frozen that afternoon. They had no idea that in exactly 30 minutes, their perfect evening was going to become their worst nightmare. The moment came just as Michael tapped his champagne glass to get everyone's attention. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he said, his voice carrying the confidence of someone about to share good news. Celeste and I wanted to gather our friends and family to share some exciting news about our future. Tonight, I'm excited to announce that Celeste has agreed to marry me," he continued, pulling out a ring box that probably cost more than most people's cars. "We're expecting our first child this spring, and we couldn't be happier about building a family together." The applause was enthusiastic, if somewhat awkward given that most of these people had known Sarah for years. That's when the federal agents walked into the room. Agent Sarah Kim from Immigration and Customs Enforcement entered through the main door, while Agent David Park from the Financial Crimes Division came through the kitchen entrance. They moved with the kind of calm authority that immediately commanded attention. "Celeste Laurent," Agent Kim announced, her voice carrying through the suddenly silent room. "You're under arrest for immigration fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit marriage fraud." The transformation in Celeste was immediate and shocking. The radiant bride-to-be vanished, replaced by someone cold and calculating. "Michael Patterson," Agent Park continued, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit financial fraud, money laundering, and violation of spousal financial obligations." The ring box fell from Michael's hand, hitting the restaurant floor with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the absolute silence. The chaos that followed was everything Sarah had hoped for and more. Michael tried to demand explanations while federal agents read him his rights. Celeste attempted to maintain her Innocent Foreign Woman Act until Agent Kim started listing her previous victims and their financial losses. But the moment that made everything worthwhile came when Celeste's eyes found Sarah's across the room. Sarah saw the exact instant when she realized what had happened, when she understood that the pathetic, naive wife she'd been mocking for months had actually been playing a much longer game than she was. "You knew," Celeste said, her French accent completely gone as federal agents cuffed her hands behind her back. "All this time, you knew everything." "I knew some of it," Sarah replied calmly. "The rest I investigated. Turns out marketing executives are pretty good at research when they're properly motivated." "How long?" Michael asked, his voice hollow. "How long have you known?" "Since our anniversary dinner," Sarah said, enjoying the look of complete devastation that crossed his face. "Since I overheard your fiancé mocking me in French at the restaurant. You remember, the night you thought you were celebrating your successful manipulation of your wife." The federal agents led them away in handcuffs, past a room full of people who'd thought they were attending a romantic engagement party, but had instead witnessed the arrest of 2 people for fraud, conspiracy, and multiple financial crimes. The silence that followed their departure was broken only by the murmur of confused conversations. Patricia Wells appeared at Sarah's side, having watched the entire arrest from a corner table. "How does it feel?" she asked quietly. "Like justice," Sarah said, watching through the window as Michael and Celeste were placed in separate federal vehicles. "And like the beginning of getting my life back." The next few months were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, asset recovery, and media attention. Michael's law firm fired him immediately and cooperated fully with federal investigators. Celeste was deported to France, where she faced additional charges for international fraud. Most satisfying of all, the prenatal paternity test revealed that the child she was carrying wasn't Michael's at all, but belonged to another American businessman she'd been manipulating simultaneously. The divorce was finalized within 6 weeks, with Michael signing over everything he'd tried to hide in exchange for a plea bargain that kept him out of federal prison. Sarah recovered not only their original assets, but additional damages for the financial fraud, the emotional distress, and the systematic deception. But perhaps the most satisfying aspect was the message Sarah received from Agent Kim 6 months later. Celeste Laurent had been part of a much larger fraud network that targeted American men across multiple states. Sarah's investigation and the evidence she'd gathered had helped federal agents identify and arrest 12 other people involved in marriage fraud schemes. "Your work on this case probably saved dozens of other families from what you went through," Agent Kim told her. "These networks rely on victims staying isolated and ashamed. When someone fights back as systematically as you did, it destroys their entire operation." A year later, Sarah was living in a beautiful apartment overlooking Central Park, funded by the settlement from Michael's fraud and her own successful marketing career. She'd started a consulting business helping other women navigate complex divorce investigations, particularly cases involving financial fraud or international complications. The real victory wasn't the money or the justice, or even the satisfaction of watching two criminals face consequences for their actions. The real victory was discovering that she was much stronger, much smarter, and much more capable than anyone had given her credit for, including herself. Sometimes the worst betrayals teach us the most important lessons about our own strength. Sometimes when someone tries to destroy you, they accidentally show you how much power you actually have. And sometimes when people think they're playing chess with someone who's only capable of checkers, they discover that their opponent has been playing chess all along. That French mistress thought American women were naive and easy to manipulate. She was wrong about Sarah Mitchell, and her mistake cost her everything. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.